Did you know there are people who get paid to taste pet food? Or that there are models hired to act as living mannequins? Well, today we're going to explore some of the weirdest jobs around the world that will make you think, seriously? They pay someone to do that? Let's watch it. It's fascinating. Pet food taster. Have you ever wondered what pet food tastes like? Well, there are people who don't have to wonder because their job is to taste these products. And yes, while there are canine and feline tasters, since the food is ultimately for them, by the end of the day, these unusual human tasters also sample the food, evaluating factors like flavor, smell, and texture. Essentially, their job is to taste what we feed our pets, including kibble, wet food, and even treats. Their evaluations consider aspects like aroma, taste, consistency, texture, and even appearance, as the latter needs to be appealing not just to the pets, but also to the owners buying the product. While it's not mandatory for tasters to consume the products, many do so for hygiene and practicality. According to them, the food isn't that different from what humans would eat, except it's less salty and spicy. The work of these professionals is crucial to ensure that pet food is safe, nutritious, and palatable since, surprisingly, animals can be quite picky. Even if the food is nutritionally perfect, they won't eat it if they don't like the taste. These employees typically work in sensory testing labs and use advanced equipment to measure food quality. Some of these places also employ testing panels that include both human tasters and pets to get a more comprehensive evaluation of the product's palatability. One of the biggest challenges for tasters is assessing food meant for animals with taste and smell senses very different from humans. For instance, cats cannot perceive sweet flavors, and tasters need to be aware of this. Additionally, they must have the tolerance to taste products that might not be pleasant from a human perspective. Here's something interesting. The average monthly salary of a pet food taster is $4,084. Not too shabby. Suddenly, dog food doesn't sound so unappetizing. Living mannequin. Before strutting their stuff on the most famous runways, models often take on unusual jobs, like being a living mannequin. That's right, in some stores in Europe and the United States, there's a trend of paying models to wear the store's clothing while posing in the windows, just like mannequins. Fortunately, they don't always have to stand completely still, but they must look impeccable at all times. This requires great body control since, while they can move, they can't scratch, relax, sigh, or make any movement that breaks the illusion. These models earn about $21 per hour, although their work usually limits them to launching new collections and special events. Definitely no one said modeling was easy. Mattress tester. My grandma used to tell me that I'd never make money if I stayed in bed. She was partly right. You won't earn money lying in your own bed. But that doesn't mean you can't make a living testing mattresses. You just have to be willing to lie on hundreds of them, some of which can be incredibly uncomfortable. We're talking about professional mattress testers, a real job even if it sounds strange. Their task is to evaluate the comfort, durability, support, and quality of various types of mattresses, ensuring they meet company standards and consumer expectations. The job involves lying on all kinds of mattresses for long periods in different positions, assessing aspects like firmness, softness, and support for various body parts. While it might seem like a dream job for many, it requires extensive knowledge of ergonomics and material science to understand mattress quality and how design affects the body. Comfort is subjective, so testers must have a good grasp of consumer preferences. They also need to clearly communicate their findings so mattress designers can make necessary adjustments. And the pay? Mattress testers earn an average of $10,072 per month. It's literally the job of my dreams. Professional liner. At some point, you've probably had to stand in line for a boring errand or perhaps endured an endless queue for a concert or to buy a much-anticipated product. Yes, it's one of the most tedious parts of modern life, but did you know there are people you can literally pay to stand in line for you? That's right. We're talking about professional line standers, individuals you can hire to wait in long lines and call you when you're about to reach the front. It may sound a bit out there, but it's a legitimate career in some parts of the world, especially in bustling cities like New York, where large events can attract millions of people, leading to impossibly long lines. According to the professionals themselves, it's kind of like an Uber service, but for lines. What these unusual professionals earn varies greatly depending on the type of line they're standing in, but on average, they make around $1,000 a month just by waiting in line. Sure, it's not much, but all you have to do to earn that money is wait. Water slide tester. As a kid, you probably dreamed of riding all the attractions at a water park over and over again without lines or waiting. Well, if you know the right people, you can turn that childhood dream into your adult job, as there are indeed water slide testers. And that job involves riding these attractions again and again. Sure, it sounds like every kid's dream job, but it's a lot more complex than you might think. You see, their role is to evaluate the fun factor and overall experience of water slides at theme parks, resorts, and other recreational venues. But one of the most important aspects is assessing the safety of these rides for visitors. This involves riding slides that aren't always completely safe. Basically, the one testing safety is you, with your body, so you essentially have to accept being a living guinea pig. Consequently, bruises and bumps on the slide are a constant occupational hazard. If you want this position, you better have a couple of engineering degrees, because they also have to conduct a series of tests and evaluations on the slides, which include checking the structure, the stability of supports, the quality of materials, and the water conditions. So before diving in, there's a lot of work to do. One of the biggest challenges for water slide testers is balancing thrill with safety. A slide needs to be exciting enough to attract visitors, but without compromising safety, and it's up to the testers to find that middle ground. It goes without saying that they also need to have a high tolerance for adrenaline and water, as they spend a lot of time on slides and in pools. The average pay for this job is $29 an hour, which is around $5,000 a month, so it's not a bad gig. But keep in mind, it's one of the less sought-after professions, so if you want the position, you'll have to compete fiercely for it. Ice cream taster. One of the coolest parts of the ice cream industry is that new flavors keep popping up from time to time, which means there are food professionals who dedicate their careers to tasting these new ice creams to predict how they will affect consumers. That's right, if you work in the food industry and know the right people, you might one day earn the title of professional ice cream taster. Awesome, right? Now, the main task of these professionals is to evaluate the quality, flavor, texture, and consistency of different types of ice cream to ensure they meet company standards and consumer expectations. This is particularly important in this industry, as flavors inevitably have different textures, some of which may not work for all markets, and these professionals are responsible for standardizing ice cream. Flavor is one of the most critical factors in this product. Tasters sample each batch to ensure it is balanced, authentic, and enjoyable. They look for flavors that stand out clearly without being too intense or too mild. They also check that there are no undesirable flavors resulting from mixing two different flavors, which can happen. The same goes for the consistency and aroma of each ice cream batch. One of the biggest challenges for these employees is the need to maintain a sharp and sensitive palate throughout the day, despite repeatedly tasting rich and sweet products, which can lead to something known as sensory fatigue, where after tasting many flavors, they temporarily lose the ability to taste anything. Moreover, many of these experts take out insurance in case they lose their sense of taste, since it's vital for their job. Although the salary isn't as high as in other jobs, averaging around $2,500 a month, still, getting paid to eat ice cream is a pretty sweet gig. Voice of the system. Voice actors are used to having their voices heard everywhere. But can you imagine giving voice to an entire software system? Well, that's been the case for many voice actors who have had the incredible job of lending their voices to some of the most recognizable messages in the online world. For example, there's Fabio Arcaniegas, a voice actor from Colombia, who brought life to the voice Carlos, one of the most recognizable voices from the well-known text-to-speech program Loquendo, which by a twist of fate became one of the most used voices in YouTube videos during the 2000s. Then there's Joanna Rubio, who is none other than the voice behind the antivirus Avast message. Unfortunately, this type of work is often just a one-time gig for voice actors, as software creators only need to record certain phrases or even just tones of voice to make the auditory software function. But hey, just imagine having your voice immortalized in software that will be used long after. That must feel pretty interesting. Cochineal growers. Some jobs are done not for the money, but to keep ancient traditions and products alive, like that of cochineal growers, one of the oldest jobs in Mexico. You see, in Mexican lands, there's a small and unusual insect that inhabits nopal cacti. These insects evolved to become parasites of the plant, so when they reach the cactus, they cling to it for the rest of their lives, somewhat like barnacles. Now, this would usually be considered a pest for the nopales, but it turns out that these insects contain a chemical in their bodies known as carminic acid, which is the brightest natural red dye in the world and is completely safe for human consumption. You could practically bathe in this dye, and it wouldn't have any effect on your health. In fact, it's used in many industries, so if you've ever had strawberry yogurt, you should know that the pink color of that yogurt comes from cochineal, not strawberries. Because of this, for centuries, cochineal was the most widely used source of red pigment across industries, leading to thousands of nopal farms in Mexico dedicated to raising and processing this curious insect. However, the creation of entirely synthetic dyes, like aniline, caused the production of this natural dye to seriously decline because, well, producing significant amounts of dye requires planting plenty of hectares of nopal, while aniline can be made in a lab. Today, there are few traditional cochineal producers left, but the ink they produce is a true treasure, as there is no other red dye that is as bright or safe. And that, well, I think that's something worth working for, no matter the price. Hand models. The modeling industry has some of the strangest facets you can imagine because you really don't need to be attractive all over to be a model. You just need at least one of your extremities to be beautiful, as is the curious case of hand models. You see, these are professionals specialized in using their hands for modeling, advertising, and visual media. Their work is much more specific than that of traditional models, as it focuses exclusively on showcasing their hands attractively for various commercial applications, since many advertising efforts center on displaying hands using products like jewelry, cell phones, and more. Naturally, those hands need to be visually appealing, creating a strange niche within modeling. An interesting aspect of this industry is that hand models are often ordinary people, and in fact, they usually don't have the perfect features seen in other modeling spheres. They're just regular guys and girls like you and me, except their hands have a particularly healthy and attractive appearance. But being a hand model requires just as much, if not more, effort than being a regular model, because any imperfection on your hands, like a broken nail or a small accidental cut, can mean the end of your career. In some of the more extreme cases, hand models are forced to use their hands as little as possible in their daily lives and actually act as if they have some physical limitation with their hands. The criteria brands typically look for are symmetrical hands with smooth skin and no visible scars, spots, or imperfections. And of course, perfectly manicured nails of medium length. They are often required to maintain specific poses for long periods while photographers adjust lights and cameras. Therefore, patience and the ability to stay still are essential. Strangely enough, you need a steady hand for this job, but it often pays off, as they can earn between $150 and $1,000 for a single photo session. Though one has to wonder, is it worth it not to use your hands normally in exchange for that money? Professional maid of honor. Always the maid of honor, but never the bride. Some women suffer this fate when attending weddings. Others turn that fate into a full-time job. Now that's thinking with your wallet. As strange as it may sound, being a maid of honor at a wedding can be a lucrative job. You see, modern weddings have become incredibly stressful events for both the bride and groom, and over time, the role of professional maids of honor has emerged. Specialists hired to provide emotional, logistical, and practical support to the bride during preparations and on the wedding day. Of course, this role is usually filled by a close friend or relative of the bride, but some people simply don't have anyone close who can take on the traditional maid of honor role or avoid choosing someone specific to prevent conflicts among friends and family over who will be the maid of honor. So, what do professional maids of honor do? Well, it largely depends on what the bride needs, but their duties include providing emotional and moral support throughout the process. They listen to concerns, offer advice, and help keep calm in stressful moments. In a way, the job isn't too far from providing some passive therapy. They also assist in wedding planning, working alongside wedding planners and other vendors. One of the most significant challenges of this profession is the emotional and sometimes stressful nature of the work. Weddings can be emotionally charged events, and professional maids of honor must know how to navigate delicate emotional situations while maintaining professional behavior. They also need to be extremely flexible and adapt to last-minute changes or unforeseen circumstances. The average monthly salary for a maid of honor is about $3,600, which is quite decent for such an unusual job. Plus, you get to attend as many weddings as you want. Bird scarer. Usually, when you shoot at birds, it's not to do them any good. However, there are people whose job it is, in fact, to scare birds away from certain dangerous places. I know, it sounds a bit crazy, but it's true. In various parts of the United States, due to irresponsible and intensive mining in the 19th century, extremely toxic lakes have formed that contain acidic waste from copper mining, which could kill birds if they land on the lake. Such is the case with Berkeley Pit, an unnatural lake in the state of Montana, formed by rain accumulation in an old copper mine. Semi-aquatic birds like ducks or wild geese have no way of understanding how dangerous these toxic lakes are, and when they land on them, supposedly to rest during migrations, they end up completely annihilated by the acidic waters. This has forced local rangers to constantly scare birds away so they don't dare land on these harmful lakes. Usually this is done by shooting in the direction of the birds, but not directly at them. This requires professional hunters who know how to scare birds, making them feel as if the place is dangerous and full of predators. Besides using guns, which by the way only have blank rounds, these unusual professionals also use water and aerial drones to disturb these birds and thus save their lives. Wow, a job where all you have to do is annoy birds. If I didn't know it was real, I wouldn't believe it. Food photographers. People who take pictures of their food and post them on Instagram have a pretty bad reputation. And rightly so. It's better to enjoy your lunch than to snap photos and wait for it to get cold. But the truth is, taking professional food photos requires quite advanced skills in photography. Making food look extremely appetizing, like in commercials, calls for advanced techniques and even a few tricks of the trade. To entice people's appetites, it's necessary to use lighting and color tricks, like condensation drops on an image of a cold soda or the shine of fat on freshly cooked bacon. These are small details, but they make all the difference between an ordinary food photo and one that truly whets the appetite, which is exactly what advertisers and restaurant owners need. In these cases, food photographers collaborate with food stylists to prepare the dishes before the photo shoot. This involves cooking, presenting, and decorating the food in a way that highlights its freshness, color, and texture. In the past, some trickier methods were used, like applying glue to make cheese look stretchier, or using colored mashed potatoes instead of ice cream so it wouldn't melt between shots. However, nowadays, photographers often stick to using actual food. For example, when they want to take a picture of a slice of pizza with melty cheese hanging from the edges, they simply place some cheese between the slice and the rest, melting it to enhance the apparent quantity of cheese. Today, specialized techniques like macro photography allow us to see even the tiniest and most intricate details of food, such as the texture of grilled meat or the freshness of a salad. They may also use techniques like selective focus to draw the viewer's attention to the most appetizing elements of the dish. Now, in terms of photography jobs, this can be one of the most demanding, as photographers work against the clock, needing to capture images while the food is fresh and just prepared. They must also stay updated on visual trends and adapt to new market demands and consumer preferences because, believe it or not, some foods fall out of fashion while others become more prevalent on menus. And if you have a passion for photography, being a food photographer pays an average of $5,100 a month, which is more than enough to put food on the table. Golf divers. You wouldn't think diving and golf have anything in common, but strangely, professional golf has created an unusual job for divers worldwide, and it can be surprisingly lucrative. In various professional golf courses, there are small lakes that serve as particularly challenging obstacles for golfers. If the ball falls into the lake, it gets lost, and the golfer has to start over with another ball, which means many more strokes to reach the hole. It's certainly a headache for them, but it's also a business opportunity for others. Those balls usually get stuck at the bottom of the lake, and since they're abandoned by the golfers, they become the property of whoever can rescue them. That's where divers come in. They dive to the bottom and retrieve large quantities of golf balls, which are usually still in good condition because the outer covering of the ball protects it from water. A simple wash is enough to repack them and sell them to golfers. It may sound a bit far-fetched, but golf ball divers can earn up to $100,000 a year with just a couple of dives. Hey, it's an honest job, just a bit strange. Lego Master Builder. Many of us played with Legos at some point in our childhood. For some, it inspired them to become engineers or architects. But a small percentage of people decided that building with these colorful blocks would be their lifelong job, and against all odds, they made it happen. We're talking about the unusual job of Lego Master Builder. The company, especially the Legoland theme park, hires people who are exceptionally good at constructing large projects with the blocks to decorate the park and the company's facilities with all kinds of enormous Lego structures, from miniature cities to giant dinosaurs and characters made entirely of blocks. Now, this job may seem like child's play, but in reality, building these projects requires intensely mathematical thinking and great planning skills. The only way to create these megastructures is by carefully planning each stage of construction and using logarithmic building patterns to help create the structure in a relatively short time. So, despite being a child's game, the job is surprisingly challenging. This job pays around $3,800 a month, although few are lucky enough to have such a position. Ah, what wouldn't I give to be paid for building things with Lego? Google Earth photographer. If you think about it, Google Earth has made one of the most impressive efforts to capture images of our current civilization. Right now, if you have a computer with internet access, you can see how cities look all over the world, as well as monuments and wonders from everywhere. And yes, you can also look up your own house, but have you ever wondered how they achieved all this? Well, it's all thanks to a tireless team of photographers who have been spread to every corner of the globe with cutting-edge technology. And yes, it's a job you can get if you want. Google employs several tech experts who are responsible for capturing images of much of the world and its cities using advanced 3D photography equipment. However, more than photographers, they are a team of digital mappers who use vehicles equipped with 360-degree cameras to drive through streets and roads, creating a photo map along the way. For areas that are not accessible by vehicles, like mountain trails or national parks, Google uses backpacks equipped with cameras, known as Trekker. In this case, the photographers have to hike while carrying these large, heavy backpacks to capture images of more remote and hard-to-reach places. Now, if you want to be one of them, you'll need to be prepared to search in remote locations, because Google doesn't hire Google Earth photographers directly. They hire them through temporary agencies based on the region of the world they are trying to map. And of course, it's not a job that's active all year round, as photos are only needed periodically to update the virtual map we have today. There sure are some strange jobs in this world. Now tell us in the comments, what's the strangest thing you've had to do at your job? Here are two options that you'll surely love.